Hey guys, how's it going? Value Venture Investing here today. So today we're going to be talking about the 2020 stock market crash, and of course, one of the main reasons that it's going down is this virus, the corona as people like to call it. So unless you've been living under a rock, we've seen quite a bit of decline lately, a lot of volatility. Looking at the market today, the Dow was down, getting close to 800 points again, and I did predict this. I tweeted this out yesterday that yesterday seemed like a little bit of a dead cat bounce. So today we're going to be talking about what is actually happening in the market, what I'm doing, and stick around until the end because I'm going to give you some, what I think is very valuable insight into this, and maybe why you're being a little misled on this entire thing. Now we've all seen the, headlines going around, this is a 30% drop that's coming, or more. One negative headline after another negative headline. And the one, this is last week, I believe it was last week, was the week that it was just a horrible week, and they said this is the worst week since the financial crisis. Now I want you to really pay attention to that wording. The worst week since the financial crisis. And that's going to play into what I'm going to talk to you guys about a little bit later. Now, what is actually happening in the market? Okay, I mean, we've been hearing news that it's the worst, it was the worst week since the financial crisis. It's all doom and gloom. Well, so far as of recording this video, both the Dow and the S&P 500 are down approximately 11%. I'll focus on the S&P 500 just because, as you guys know, if you watch on my other videos, that it's probably one of my, it is my favorite index to watch for various reasons. I think it's a little bit more indicative of the market, but they're both down about the same amount. But going back in time, just like not going back that far at all, in the beginning of 2019 here, we saw an 18% drop. We all remember this was the doom and gloom about trade war and this and that. Slow growth, right? And this is just at the beginning of 2019. Of course, 2018, we saw approximately another 10% drop. And then going back even a little bit further here into 2016, of course, many of you probably remember this, we saw approximately another 10% gain. So we're not even going back that far, and we're seeing drops that are bigger than this. And of course, a lot of these headlines have to do with wording, right? Worst week since the financial crisis, maybe in terms of points gain. You guys saw the headline that said, well, this is the worst, single point day gain, or the worst day since the financial crisis. Well, markets are way higher than they were back then. So, of course, percentage-wise, the number's going to be bigger, but the percentage would be a lot less than some other given days. So let's actually look at some of the facts right now to give us some insight on this. So I'm gonna, preface this with, it's not great to talk about this kind of stuff. It's always serious when, people are losing their lives and stuff like that. But since it's affecting the market so much, we just have to look at the facts of what's going on. And if you guys aren't following the news really closely, these are some of the numbers as of recording this today here. So as of now, they're saying there's about a total of 91,000 cases worldwide. Of course, most of those concentrated in China because that's where it started. And then, they started with the containment strategy and it started breaking out through there, a lot in Italy. Now then the US started seeing some, and that's when the market started to really respond. Globally, about 3,000 people, which is not great. The US, like I said, this is when the market started to react, in my opinion, because they're worried about, at first it was worried about the supply chain on China, which, obviously could have negative impacts on the economy short term. But then they're worried about an outbreak in the US. So 64 there and 6 people, unfortunately, in the US. So in terms of the total, the mortality rate is about, roughly 3.8%, which sounds pretty high. And I think that's what's really spooking the market. But the estimate is probably more around 1.4 to 2%. And I think that it might even be a little bit lower than that. And I'm going to tell you at the end why I think that is. Talking about influenza, which happens every year, approximately, they think in the US, 35.5 million people get it every year. Of course, it varies. It varies from year to year. And over 34,000, say on average, 200 people die. There's been some years that have been a lot more than that, but that's a huge number. So if people are going to extrapolate, the corona here with this kind of number, that's, people would be freaking out. But this is something that happens every year. So of course, the mortality rate on influenza is about 0.1% on average, so much lower than what we're seeing, with what's going on right now. But there's been some years, like in 1918, where we've seen 2%. I mean, when it's been very contagious, there's been years that it's been much worse, right? And that is a concern with the virus that's going around right now, because it does seem to be quite contagious, and that's probably what's scaring the market a little bit as well. So what happened today? So today we saw the Federal Reserve do an emergency, and it was scripted as such on the news, an emergency rate cut by 50 basis points. Now, there's a lot of people that were calling for this, and now kind of some of the negative news that has come off about this is that, maybe they're more worried than they're letting on. They know more information going forward about jobs reports, stuff like that. Well, I don't know. I think, maybe the Fed has to respond a bit. They don't necessarily have to, but certainly the president puts a lot of pressure on them to cut. He loves to cut because he wants to see the stock market high, and it's done so incredibly well for his term here so far. Today also the G7, the news was scripted as there was not much decision in terms of how the leaders are going to combat that, and so that came off as negative news as well. Also, I think a lot of people are forgetting about this. Like, this is something that maybe we should be paying more attention to, the election. Today in the US is about Super Tuesday, and it's kind of been going back and forth between, Biden and Bernie Sanders. And of course, people are, I think, worried about both of them, but of course, people are really worried about Sanders getting in, this type of socialist thing that isn't good for the stock market, right? He quite often is singling out the stock market itself, right? So today, I heard some news that swayed a little bit towards, as of recording this, of course, towards the Sanders camp, and I think that was the reason the market was down a bit as well. But in conclusion, to give you my thoughts on this, what I'm doing, what I think of all this, I think that the general public and investors that aren't that experienced are really being kind of misled and taken advantage of. Like I said, when you look at these numbers, we hate to talk about this stuff. 80 people that are passing away is a horrible thing, and of course, you don't want to see another virus, anything, bacteria, whatever, go into into transmission to spread and to cause more people get sick and infect and stuff. So of course they want to be concerned about it, but we have to take into perspective. One, it's not going to last forever. It's a virus. When you are exposed to it, generally speaking, again, I'm not a doctor here, guys, but generally speaking, you are going to build antibodies to that, and it's eventually going to come to an end. And in terms of the cases, I think that the denominator is actually much worse than people think. And let me explain this. I think that there's a way more cases than what they're letting on. Like 64 cases in the States, I think there could be thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even more. The thing with this is, yes, it's very contagious, but also in a lot of cases, and this is why a lot of people shouldn't be as worried as they are, the symptoms are really quite mild. I mean, you get a common cold, you get a virus, you might have worse symptoms than you do with this, right? So majority of people are not going to the doctor. How do you know if you've had it? You might have already had it, right? You might have passed it on already. These are just people that generally, especially these ones, who are compromised, they're older. There's reasons that they're being tested. One of I believe it was in Washington State, it was a seniors' homes facility. I mean, they're going to be super hyper vigilant there, and they thought they had an outbreak. But the majority of people are not going to be going into the doctor for that. And a lot of people in the States who do not have healthcare insurance are not going to be going to the doctor. I was sick here not too long ago. How do I know I didn't have it, right? I think that this is much huger. Like it's probably absolutely huge spread. So that news, I think, is eventually going to come out, and it's going to spook the markets even further. So I think we are in for more downturn. However, once that denominator gets bigger, then the mortality rate is going to drop, right? When we're talking about this one here, the mortality rate is going to drop, and I think it could be just as low. Who knows? This is just guessing as the influenza, and then people are going to really take it into perspective. So, you know, if you've been in the market for a while, I think that you should definitely just relax. I mean, of course, I'm not, you know, this is just an educational channel. I'm just trying to give you guys some insight. And you know, obviously whatever's best for you, consult with a professional. But in terms of myself, absolutely not. I'm staying in the market. I'm not selling. And in terms of a pullback that's even bigger, it's a positive for me because then I can acquire more shares of things, right? And of course, the market's been on such a tear that, you know, any pullback is kind of welcome, healthy. You know, this isn't healthy, but healthy in terms of the market itself. So I think things are going to probably get much worse before they get much better. But I felt compelled to make a video for you guys just to give you a little bit of insight, to give you thoughts about what I'm doing. And you know, kind of another mindset video. It's kind of similar to the last video I just made. If you haven't seen that, I'll put a link right here. It's kind of good. It gives you perspective about how the market's up and down, and how over long periods of time you can make great returns. So I'd love to know what you guys think. Again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what's going to happen, but these are just my thoughts on it, and I would love to get your guys' thoughts as well. I mean, do you think this is much worse? Do you think the denominator will be much bigger than what people actually are anticipating, or what actually is the case? What do you think about the election even? I mean, this isn't a political channel, but you know, how do you see that, how do you see that affecting the market? Because I think that after this is done, that'll be the next thing that might make the market really choppy, right? So I think we're in for some, you know, downside for sure. Luckily, I do have some inverse market ETFs that, you know, increase in value when the market goes down, but maybe that's a topic for another video. So again, let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. Really helps the channel, guys. And I will see you in the next one. And that's going to be it for today.